Well, good afternoon, Olwyn.
Good afternoon, Mark.
This is Mrs Olwyn Green, OAM, and we're it's the 11th of January, so this is what I'm calling day 11 of the 100 Days to Harvest, looking at this project called the Friendship Tree, looking at friendship between Australia and Korea. And many people know you already, Olwyn. You've got quite a good reputation among many, particularly those who have association with the military. But, he brought out this photograph before, and it's so beautiful, of this handsome man who was your husband,
Yes.
Charlie Green.
Yep.
And this photograph is taken. Do you know what year it would have been?
It's 1939.
About 1939.
I understand, just
Yeah.
before he went to World War II.
Wow. And how old would he have been then? He would have been.
He was born in 1919.
Only 20?
He was 20.
That's amazing.
He wouldn't have been quite 20. His birthday's on the 26th of
Incredible.
December.
Yeah,
So he was nearly 20.
that's remarkable. So was he commissioned at this stage?
Yes,
He
he was
was.
commissioned.
Okay.
When he became in the CMF, he became a lieutenant.
Yeah, right.
And then was commissioned into the AIF as a lieutenant.
But he's such a athletic looking figure, handsome, great eyes. He was the youngest. Is that correct? He was the youngest commanding officer,
World War II.
Australian commanding officer in World War II.
Yes.
Remarkable. And then at the beginning of the Korean War, of all the officers, he was selected to command the 3rd Battalion.
Yes.
And
Even though he'd only been in the regular army, only 48 I think it was he joined, so he'd only been in the army a couple of years in the regular army.
oh, really?
He was in the CMF between World War II
In Korea.
and Korea, and the regular army.
Yeah.
He was he re-raised the 41st what was then militia battalion. It's still called the 41st Battalion.
Right.
Royal New South Wales Regiment now.
Okay.
No, yeah, it's the 41st.
Yeah. And you've got your book, Love in Two Wars. Is that what it's called? Love.
The name is still Charlie.
Sorry, the name's still Charlie. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
The name's still Charlie. It's a wonderful love story. You know, it's beautiful. It's a really beautiful book. I highly recommend people read it just to hear this beautiful story told of a romance.
Between two very country people.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So then, but there's a sadness to the story, of course, with his death in Korea in 1950.
1950.
Yeah. And
He was only 30 years of age.
30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So tragic, yeah. This photograph here, it's Cosgrove when he was Chief of the Army, and on the right-hand side is Choi, Yongkil Choi. And I think there's a great story of friendship between Yongkil's wife, Jean, and yourself.
Yes.
I'm just going to change arms here because I need to get a selfie stick or something. But
I haven't seen her as often lately as I would like to have.
right, I've only met her that one time at your birthday party, and at face value, I would have always just thought, well, you've known her through the Korean community. You know a lot of people through the Korean community.
Yes, I'd like to be able to find out just exactly when I first met the Choys.
Yeah.
It was many, many years ago.
When were you first aware that of Yonkil's
Connection.
proximity to Charlie?
I met him.
Like before, after you met Jean?
Oh no!
No.
I met him first.
Really? Because so he's a older man here in this photograph, but he was picked up as an 16 years old on a battlefield,
On the battlefield.
searching bodies for food
Yes.
as he was trying to head south to
Yes.
safety.
Yes, from North.
And the Australians would have been in North Korea at that stage, possibly.
I can't
Is that right?
remember. Well, it was. Yes, they would have been in
They would have been
North
North Korea,
because it was just
sure.
before Charlie was killed.
Yeah, sure.
Mm.
So he was brought into the Australian battalion
Yes.
and
Stayed with them.
stayed with them as sort of like a medical orderly. Is that right?
He went to the medical
Right.
orderly under the supervision of the
Yeah.
medical orderly, and he helped them with the wounded would have been Battle of
Chongju, yeah, which tragically would have included Charlie.
After that battle. He was
Right.
killed.
Yeah. So, like, I don't know if I'm reading more into the friendship than is actually the case, but it always struck me that there was this remarkable thread in this tapestry between you and Jean in that regard.
I think the important thing is that he felt that 3RAR was his home.
Really?
And that's why he migrated to Australia.
Really?
And 3RAR accepted him as an honorary member of the battalion.
Yeah.
And he put a lot of effort into bringing the Koreans and Australians together in Australia.
Yeah.
And ultimately, there's a very strong bond between the Australian veterans and Australians generally, and the Korean migrants at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot who have had military service.
Many of whom had military service. Mm.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, you are a remarkable lady for so many reasons, and one of them is your role as like a stalwart of the Korean War veterans.
Mm.
You've really been a unifying and a stabilising influence.
Well, I can't resist a story.
in what is quite often a divided and divisive network.
Mm.
But I wanted to change arms again, but I just want to come back to this issue of friendship. We were talking before,
Yes.
and you asked me what is perhaps what is a core value of friendship?
Friendship, yes.
And I think it's a really interesting question to tease out.
It is. Immediately what comes to mind is friendships made in active service in war.
Yeah.
And probably the strongest I've come in contact with. I've noticed, I've done military history about World War II, and Charlie served all through World War II and the Korean War.
Yeah.
And I am astounded at the strength of those friendships. So, service together, that's when men are most bonded, and that bond remains very strong. I wonder if in civvy life there is such a strong bond as that with men.
Yeah, maybe not on that level, but that word that you just used, service, in some regard, doing something beyond that is what is in your own vested interest.
I could imagine bushfire men, ambulance men, in hospitals, depending on the vocation, they'd be very bonded.
Yeah, but it's an interesting question to tease out because, like you say, military service is probably on the far end of the spectrum, and then there's a whole range of other ways that the friendship is seen in the relationship between Australia and Korea. So, for example, the early missionaries. I mean, I think there's a similar, under different circumstances, but there's a similar bonding influence of service in that regard. And why I think that's of value personally, as I'm reflecting on this, is that's where I think business can actually gain from in terms of how it can be of value in bridging that relationship between Australia and Korea. Not to not to sort of become to do things for the sake of seeking to create their own value, but business is about obviously delivering value in order to receive a commercial gain.
I think that if they're going to pride can come out of it.
Sure.
I think that helps greatly.
I mean, if there's some underlying aspect of pride or service or contribution beyond just the buying and selling, interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah. So, and just to wrap it up, Olwyn, here on this little recording, what's the most interesting story or fact that you know of between Australia and Korea?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
Well, I've been coming to the conclusion lately that we in Australia haven't done enough to acknowledge how much the Korean people, that's the government of Korea, the immigrants in Australia, have done to support the veterans who fought or the Australians who fought in the Korean War. They, for as long as I can remember, there's always a commemoration event on, and the Koreans are still saying thank you for your service. Mm-hmm. I think that's quite remarkable, really.
Yeah, it's certainly they have certainly carried the lion's share in recognising the contribution of veterans.
Yes.
And it's been remarkably uneven.
And we could think in Australia that only us get that recognition, but I'm quite sure the other countries who served in Korea would get the same recognition.
Yeah.
If one goes to an event in Korea where veterans go to a common event, there you find the French and
that's right, or the other
the Dutch
countries, Americans and British and
any
Canadians.
one of the 16 nations that sent a force to Korea.
For sure. Well, thanks for your service, Olwyn. Great to see you again.
Thank you.
Yeah.